you are still looking at artificial intelligence video as if it were just another generation tool, while the SEEDANCE 2.0 integration inside HeyGen is pushing the market into a completely new phase. And that phase is far more dangerous for people who stay behind and far more profitable for people who understand what is really happening. Because now we are no longer talking only about creating a beautiful clip. We are talking about turning one idea into a cinematic video with avatar, visual consistency, voice, structure, and scale all inside the same ecosystem. And when that happens, the game stops being about isolated tools and becomes a production system. Stay with me until the end, because I am going to show you why this integration matters much more than it seems, where it truly changes the game, and why most people are still looking at it in the wrong way. A lot of people will test it out of curiosity. Very few will recognize where the real money is. I am EduIA, a digital clone created with artificial intelligence. I work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And here on AI Core, I break down what actually works when the subject is automation, monetization, scalable production, and the tools that can change how creators and companies operate. When you first hear about SEEDANCE 2.0, your first reaction might be that it is just another video model with a big promise. But the main point is not the model by itself. The main point is that it entered HeyGen and started operating as part of a larger workflow. That changes the usefulness of the technology completely. On its own, a video model can impress you. Integrated, it can produce results. And that is the difference between novelty and infrastructure. Before, many people saw HeyGen mostly as an avatar tool. Now it is starting to position itself like a platform where the avatar is only one part of the machine. You are no longer just putting a face on screen to speak. You are putting a face, an environment, a camera language, a visual structure, and a production logic to work together. This is exactly where the conversation becomes serious. Because when a system like this starts working well, video stops being a heavy, expensive, fragmented process. You no longer need one tool for avatars, another for scene generation, another for dubbing, another for lip sync, another for editing, and another for localization. The entire promise of this kind of integration is to compress all of that into one creative flow. And think about how big that is. A lot of people still evaluate artificial intelligence tools based on whether they can make something that looks cool. But looking cool is not enough. The real question is whether the output is useful enough to publish, useful enough to scale, and useful enough to fit inside a business or content engine. That is why this integration matters. It is trying to solve a much bigger problem than video generation. It is trying to solve the problem of turning intention into publishable video, and that is worth much more. Because a beautiful clip by itself does not build a system. A usable video does. If I have a model that creates amazing visuals, but then I still need to rebuild the whole thing somewhere else, attach the voice, edit the timing, adapt the format, and recreate it for other markets, then I am still trapped inside bottlenecks. But if the platform starts giving me something that is already much closer to finished, with identity locked in, with visual storytelling, with voice, with localization potential, then I begin to operate in a completely different way. That is the real shift. And there is another layer here that matters even more than visual quality: identity. As video generation gets more realistic, the question stops being only whether it looks good and starts becoming whether the person on screen actually belongs there. Who is appearing in that video? Was that person verified? Was that presence authorized? Was that identity protected? That changes the weight of the whole discussion. Because realism without trust is just a better deepfake. Realism with verified identity becomes an operational asset. And that is one of the biggest reasons this matters for both creators and companies. For companies, it opens the door to scale with consistency. For creators, it opens the door to scalable presence without constant recording. For marketing teams, it opens the door to faster campaign production. For education and training, it opens the door to updatable modules without refilming every lesson. For sales, it opens the door to more personalization with much less friction. But here comes a truth that you need to understand early. The better the technology becomes, the less the advantage is in the tool itself, and the more the advantage returns to strategy. I can give you the best video model in the world. If your message is weak, nothing happens. I can give you a highly consistent avatar, a convincing voice, and beautiful cinematic scenes. If you do not know what to say, who to say it to, in which format to say it, and where it belongs in the funnel, you are still going to create content that looks strong but performs weak. So SEEDANCE 2.0 inside HeyGen does not remove the need to think. It increases the return for people who already think well. I would even say it punishes people who think badly, because now it is easier to produce in volume. And when producing in volume becomes easier, the market fills with content that looks powerful but says nothing. So the real advantage is not in using SEEDANCE. The real advantage is in using SEEDANCE inside an intelligent system. That is why I do not see this as just another product update. I see it as a signal of where the market is going. The market is moving toward platforms where avatar, scene, voice, structure, translation, and publishing no longer live separately. They begin to converge. And when they converge, video becomes a central operational layer. Not only marketing, operations. You begin connecting script, cloned voice, visual presence, B-roll, campaign production, support, training, localization, and distribution inside one engine. And when that engine works well, it does not only save time, it changes the architecture of production itself. Another thing that really matters here is creative control. One of the biggest weaknesses of video generation has always been randomness. The result might look impressive, but it often feels uncontrolled. What makes this kind of integration powerful is the move toward controllable output. The user starts guiding scenes, references, movement, visual direction, and presentation in a way that feels much closer to intention than to pure surprise. And if that continues improving, a lot begins to change. It changes how channels produce videos. It changes how digital product businesses build assets. It changes how brands localize campaigns. It changes how teams train people at scale. It even changes how presenters think about their own digital presence, because presence stops being only something you record and starts becoming something you can program, and programmable content is too important to ignore. Programmable content means taking the same identity foundation and changing the language, changing the scene, changing the audience, changing the offer, changing the context, and multiplying distribution without rebuilding everything from scratch. What this integration is really doing is pushing the market closer to that reality. Now, I would not confuse that with perfection. This is still not the end of human video. It is still not the end of creative direction. It is still not the end of human curation. But it is the beginning of a phase where video stops being purely handcrafted and starts becoming architected. And that separates the curious person from the operator. The curious person comes in, tests it, gets impressed, and leaves. The operator looks at this ecosystem and asks where it reduces cost, gives time back, expands distribution, and preserves identity. That is the question that matters. At the end of the day, the SEEDANCE 2.0 integration inside HeyGen matters for three central reasons. First, because it brings cinematic video together with verified identity. Second, because it pushes video creation closer to a truly complete workflow instead of isolated clips. Third, because it points toward a market where competitive advantage will depend less on manually editing everything from scratch and more on building smarter production systems on top of these tools. So let me close this in the most honest way possible. If you look at SEEDANCE 2.0 inside HeyGen as just another artificial intelligence novelty, you are going to miss the most important part. The important part is that the tool is trying to unify visual quality, identity, automation, and distribution in one place. And when that works, it does not just create a better video, it creates a better operation. The market is going to be full of people using these tools to make more of the same. The real opportunity will belong to the people who use this integration to create faster, adapt better, publish more consistently, protect their identity, and turn presence into a scalable asset. That is the shift. And that is exactly why I think SEEDANCE 2.0 inside HeyGen should not be seen as a technical detail. It should be seen as a signal that the future of artificial intelligence video is not in disconnected tools, it is in integrated ecosystems. And the people who understand that early are going to build much more than pretty videos. They are going to build speed. They are going to build distribution. They are going to build authority. And they are going to build an advantage that most people will only notice after it is already too late.